Happy Wednesday, and thank you for coming to the October LGBTQ plus DataPride Tableau user group event for Conquering the Scary Things in Tableau. We are so excited to have you all here and so excited for our upcoming presenters. My name is Lawrence Stribbin. My pronouns are he, him, and his. And along with my co-lead, Sarah Carr, are super excited to be bringing you this today. So, just as a highlight for what is the DataPride LGBTQ plus Tableau user group, we are a virtual community space to highlight, elevate, and bring together the LGBTQ plus community in data and its allies. So today's agenda, it's coming out, equity data, and feedback. Oh my, a lot of scary things today. So we're going to do some welcome and updates, give a quick highlight on National Coming Out Day, which is today, which we are super excited to be having this event today. Then we'll be going in with Lisa Trescott and Kimberly Coutts on Beyond Checking the Box, Making Student Equity Data Meaningful, and the Etiquette of Feedback with Nicole Klassen. And then we will be wrapping up. For any questions that may come up, please use the Q&A function during the presentations. And of course, keep commenting and, networking in the chat as well. So welcome, super excited to have everyone today. It's been a crazy morning for me, myself, already, but it's absolutely fantastic to be able to take the time and be here today out of my usual day job work, and so excited for you all to be spending this time with us. So just a quick update, and really wanted to highlight this, especially since we have an Iron Viz champion as one of our presenters today. Currently, the Iron Viz qualifier event is happening. It's going from October 2nd through the 31st. The theme is love, visiting what you love. I know that we're now in week 2, and there are so many resources, not only from the data fam, but from Tableau around looking at the vises, how to plan it out and work on it. We definitely are in kind of that week 2, and I'm already, Sarah just commented in the chat, speaking of scary things, Iron Viz qualifier right now is definitely a scary thing. I know for me, I'm a little bit anxious about it all and getting everything done. But check out that QR code for more info, and hope to see can't wait to see all the vises that come out for people visiting what they love and their passions. So let's talk today is National Coming Out Day. So National Coming Out Day started in 1988 on the first anniversary of the National March on Washington for lesbian gay rights. Since then, it has been a noted day for the LGBTQ plus community centered on the journey of coming out. The HRC is the group that puts this out here in the US for all of us and really brings out events and more. This photo is taken from the HRC's website and it's it's an old poster for National Coming Out Day. One of the things here is, it doesn't matter. For us as the DataPride Tableau user group, we're here for our allies and we're here for the community across the board, no matter their journey in coming out. I know that actually this is the anniversary of me personally having come out 15 years ago now. And even then, as we move forward, coming out is a journey, especially in the community, as we go through so many different things. And so definitely wanted to highlight, whether you're out, you're still working through and understanding yourself or more, we're here for you. And, this is not a day that you have to come out or you have to do anything. It's just a day of recognition for that journey. And so really wanted to give a highlight as we continue forward with the LGBTQ LGBTQ plus DataPride Tableau user group, we will be having more events centered on these with the Data Fam and the LGBTQ plus community in the Data Fam as well. Couldn't pull one of the major panels that we wanted to together for this week, but we definitely will be doing work on that in the future. So with that, I want to go to our first presenters, Lisa Trescott and Kimberly Coutts. Lisa is a research analyst at Maricosta College, where she supports the efforts of the college's student equity and achievement programs. In her role, Lisa uses Tableau to examine student outcomes, help identify students in need, and assist the college with strategic planning. She has been using Tableau since 2017 and is a current Tableau social ambassador, co-leads the California Community College's Tableau user group, and was the IronViz Global Champion in 2021. And actually, I do have to say about Lisa, she has an amazing RuPaul's Drag Race Viz, and the story about how she got all that data together is absolutely fantastic, and I absolutely love it. And I got to hear that at TC this year, and just, it's amazing. And with that, we also have Kimberly Coutts is a research analyst at Maricosta College as well. Over the course of her career, she has worked in student services, administration, and institutional effectiveness, but data analysis and visualization is where she is most at home. Her primary uses of Tableau include the analysis of survey data and the effectiveness of college efforts, such as the high school dual enrollment, guided pathways, and zero textbook cost initiatives. A Tableau user since 2016, she currently co-leads the California Community College's Tableau user group. Thank you both for being here. Super excited to have you both. It's all yours.
Awesome. It doesn't look like I have screen sharing ability.
Should be turned on for you. Let me stop sharing mine.
Oh, there we go. That's what did it. Okay. You can all see my screen, yes? Yeah. Okay. I will take your down. Yes. Awesome. So as Lauren said, my name is Lisa Trescott. I am joined with my colleague, Kim Coutts, and we are both research analysts at Maricosta College. And we're super excited to be giving an encore performance of our TC23 presentation. And we're going to be talking all about how we use Tableau to analyze and ultimately make meaning and take action on our student equity data. So obviously we work in higher ed, but all of the tips and techniques and analysis that we're going to be talking about today really can cross industry. So don't worry if you are not in higher ed. So just to give you an idea of what we're going to be going through today, Kim's going to kick it off and talk about how we identify groups of students who are experiencing disproportionate impact, or DI. This is essentially how we identify groups of students that we need to target for support and resources. And then I'm going to talk about how we've really helped build data literacy around DI, or disproportionate impact, at our college. And we'll give you some tips and tricks on how to display disaggregated data, because a lot of times when we're looking at equity data, the big charge is disaggregating it by multiple groups across time points, across metrics, and it can get really messy and kind of difficult to muddle through. So we'll give you some tips on how we have started to visualize that data at Maricosta. And then Kim's going to talk about how we've used all of this data, all of these analyses to help support faculty, staff, administrators across our campus. And then we have questions here at the end, but please, we'll try to monitor the chat as we present. So if you have questions throughout, please feel free to put them in the chat. And with that, I will turn it over to Kim.
Fantastic. Good morning, everybody. Thank you also for inviting us as well. So what do we mean when we say DI? DI occurs when within a population of people, a group of people with a similar demographic characteristic experiences participation or success rates that are significantly lower than the rest of the population. And this is really important for us to look at, because it's easy, not only in education, but in all industries, to look at a number and say, wow, that success rate is X, that looks great. In reality, there are a lot of people within that population that may not be having the same experience as the group average. And so that's where DI comes in. DI allows us to see, okay, where are the differences that are simple fluctuations in the data, and where are the differences where a group is absolutely significantly lower than the rest of the population, and what do we need to do to reach out and provide assistance to help close those gaps. We use two methods to measure DI on our campus. When we talk about issues of student success, achievement, graduation, we use a percentage point gap methodology. When we're talking about issues of representation or participation, we use something called the proportionality index. Now, these are the two that we use because these are what was adopted by our statewide chancellor's office. These are not, however, the only methodologies for DI out there. This is just what we have been recommended to use. And we're not going to get really deep into the math here today. We're just going to keep the very 30,000 foot level of explaining what happens in the calculations. But if you'd like to discuss the math and the behind the scenes stuff, please don't hesitate to reach out to either one of us because we're happy to talk about it at any time. So when we talk about the percentage point gap method, we're talking about, let's say, student success or course pass rates. What we do is we take our selected group and we look at their success rate, and we compare that success rate to the success rate of everybody who isn't in that group. And the difference between those two numbers is the percentage point gap. We take that number and we compare it against a margin of error that we calculate based on the size of the population that we're working with. And if the gap exceeds the margin of error, then we say that there's disproportionate impact going on. If the gap does not exceed the margin of error, even if our group's rate is lower than the rest of the population, we don't have evidence that DI is occurring. And all of this presumes that we have at least 11 students in our population. If we have less than 10 or fewer, that's really not enough to make an assessment of what's really going on. And so in those cases, we don't report our DI findings at all. So this is how we used to show our PPG. Over on the left-hand side, you will see the different sexual orientation characteristics that we have on our campus. And then along the top, we have 4 different columns that show the last 4 fall semesters of DI data for this particular metric. I think this is course success, but I'm not entirely sure. If we can zoom in on one of these, we'll explain what's going on. The bars themselves are the gaps between each group and the rest of the population. The dark black lines are the margin of error thresholds that when the bar crosses that threshold, then we have evidence of DI. And then we use color very intentionally through this process to say, okay, these are the groups that you can see at a glance. These are the groups that we need to do some outreach to. And while this is a lot of really great detailed information that shows a lot of information in a very small space, the feedback that we got pretty quickly from folks, primarily folks that were not really data savvy or comfortable with data, was this is way too much information. I don't need to know margins of error. I don't need to know percentages. All I need to know is which populations of students do I need to reach out to and provide support services. So we needed something that was a little more digestible to a broader audience. And Lisa came up with a brilliant solution. This is the exact same information that we presented on the previous slide. And this is kind of a modified heat map where you can see very quickly, okay, which groups are being impacted, and is this just a one semester thing, or has this been going on for a while? And so this was a great way to sort of introduce those that may not be as familiar with our dashboards and data with, okay, if you take a look at this, you can really easily see where you're going to need to do your outreach. All that being said, there are people on our campus that need the detail that we provided at that previous slide. So we didn't want to throw that out entirely. So we were able to come up with what turned out to be the best of both worlds. Now, theoretically, when people read the instructions on our dashboards, they'll click on one of the boxes and that will open out a pop-up container that will show the detail. There we go. That will show the detail related to that particular semester. And then all they need to do is click it again and that will hide. that particular pop out. And that allows us to show the clean view for those that need it, and then the detailed view for those who are writing our student equity plan, who need to really dig in deep to the numbers and provide some in-depth analysis. And if you would like to know more about our percentage point gap methodology, it's not ours. This comes from a post from the data school. When we do these presentations, we like to, wherever possible, link to how to do the things that we do, because sharing is caring and all that fun stuff. So let's go on to the next thing. Okay, this is our proportionality index. When we're looking at a service or a program on our campus, we want to make sure, wherever possible, that the population of students that are utilizing the service closely matches, where appropriate, the college-wide population. And we do this using the proportionality index, which is basically a ratio. So we take a look at the program and see what percent of the overall program participation our selected group makes up. Then we compare that percentage to the percentage that same group makes up in our college-wide population. We divide one by the other, and the value that we get, or PI value, is an indicator to us of whether a group is overrepresented, underrepresented, or there's a balanced representation between the two groups. And this is an example of how we present some of our PI data. This is fake, we have to say that for our counseling dean, our fake data related to our counseling services. And this is a combination bar and area chart. On the left-hand side of each category, this is disaggregated by ethnicity. On the left-hand side, the darker bar are the percentage of students participating in counseling services. On the right-hand side is the bright blue bar that reflects the percentage that group makes up in the overall college population. And then we use a area chart to allow for color to come through and the pills along the bottom, so that when users come in and they look at these groups, it's very easy to discern quickly where the over and underrepresented groups lie. So if you were looking, for example, at our Pacific Islander group, at a glance, that without the color, it may be very difficult to see whether that group is being over or underrepresented. So that's the benefit of adding the color to those things. Okie dokie. We have created a workbook of calculations so that everybody can do their own calculations using DI for everything that we presented here today. We're not done, obviously, but everything that we present today, we have in a workbook of calculations. You can use the QR code. It's also on Miracosta College's Tableau public website. So you can go and download it at any time, switch out the data with your own data, and run your own analyses, should you wish to do so. And again, Lisa and I are available at any time to help you work through these. If at any point you have any questions, as I said, please don't hesitate to reach out. And now I'm going to hand it over to Lisa, who's going to talk about how we tricked our college community into understanding DI data.
Yes, thank you, Kim. So as y'all can see, disproportionate impact, or DI, is not one of those concepts that's super intuitive. It's not something that someone's just going to look at and immediately understand what's going on, especially under the hood. So we saw a real need to boost data literacy around this topic in particular. And as Kim said, our favorite way to teach people about data is by tricking them. We like to trick them into having fun with data so that they think they're just playing games, but actually we've created learning experiences for them. So for example, we've done things like we built an escape room in Tableau. We've done data scavenger hunts where we send out dashboards and ask people to find pieces of information. We ran a data bingo game so that we can basically create these fun environments, these fun challenges where people get super competitive, and we give out trophies and gift cards, and people are learning along the way. And we had realized when we were developing our most recent game that we had never really focused intentionally on DI. And so we wanted to change that. And so when we were creating the new game, we did just that, which is a data treasure hunt, matey. So here is the landing page for that, where basically it tells all of our Buccaneers that they're going to navigate the high seas of data. And they're going to go through 3 different challenges. And at the end, if they've answered all the challenges correct, they will find buried treasure. So one of the challenges in this treasure hunt is specific to disproportionate impact. And this is what it looks like. So you can see there's basically a fake dashboard. It's a recreation just to focus solely on disproportionate impact. And then there are 4 questions along the map. So as the user starts out, the question is pretty high level on disproportionate impact. And it really forces the user to understand the concept or going into it. This is all about how large a population has to be for us to even analyze the data. So for this first question, they have to actually go to this little information icon and read all about DI so that they have to understand it. So because this is kind of hidden in the text. And then as they go along the map, and by the time they get to this last question, they're answering something very specific where they not only have to understand what DI is and what percentage point gap is and what the MOE or the margin of error is or the threshold, they also have to understand how to find that and navigate through our dashboards. So in action, this one would look like what Kim showed before, where the user has to know, oh, hey, I have to click on this box to pop out that bar chart and then use the tooltip to get the piece of information they need for that question. So it's all about educating the user on disproportionate impact and then how to find those key pieces of information. And then when the person goes through all of the challenges, gets all of the questions correct, they find data literacy. So we ran this challenge for about a month, and all the Buccaneers who found the treasure were entered into a drawing to win a gift card and a pirate-themed trophy. And while that challenge is technically over, we still keep this dashboard on our dashboard portal page so that anyone can access it anytime. It's also on our Tableau public page if you want to sail the high seas of data and test your hand at this. But again, it's something that I continue to point people to. A lot of times people will ask me questions about how to find something in a dashboard, and I'll send them this because I think having them learn through doing is really going to help them understand the concepts a lot more. So that's a lot about DI, and that's a big piece of analyzing student equity data. But the other half is all about disaggregating data. Like Kim was talking about before, we're looking at success metrics overall, and the DI is focusing on that gap. But we also want to know how different groups are actually performing. And like I said up top, this can get really messy, especially when we're disaggregating by a variable with a lot of different categories and looking at time trends, right? All of a sudden, we start to get a lot of data points on one chart, and it can be difficult for your user to find insights. So we're going to show you how we may have used to shown data like this, and then we'll show you 2 ways to improve upon it. So this is something we may have created a while ago. And I'm going to say right now, these are all charts that Kim and I have absolutely created in our career. So we're not throwing shade. This is something that we have absolutely produced before, and we're going to show you how to make it better. So this is an example where we have the overall rate for this metric over here on the left-hand side. And then this line chart on the right is an example of how we may have disaggregated in the past. And I'm going to zoom in so you can see it a little better. Here, it's just a line chart over a couple of academic years, and we have ethnicity on the color shelf in Tableau. And we have created what the big book of dashboards would call a scary cat chart. So this is really hard on your end user to find insights, right? We have saturated this chart with color and created kind of this colorful rainbow spaghetti where your insights are really hidden. They are masked. We've used color so much that we've saturated the chart and taken away any power that color holds as a way to grab someone's attention, right? Because now the user has to, look at the color legend and map it to the lines and then kind of make sense of the lines over time. And it just gets really hard on them. It's not easy to grab something very quickly. So like I said, we're going to show 2 ways to improve upon something like this. The first is with a parameter and a parameter action. So this is the exact same data with the addition of that overall line that I showed you before overlaid here. And we have one group highlighted at a time. In this case, it's our Asian students. And it is very easy to see, hey, our Asian students are overperforming compared to the overall average every single year we're looking at, right? That wasn't easy to see before. All the other lines are grayed out, but you can see up here in the top left that it says click on a line, and then it will highlight that group. So seeing that in action, you can see the user now can click on a line and it will then highlight that against the overall. So this really allows the user to see how one group is performing compared to the overall, which we couldn't really see before. So if you want to create something like this, like I said, it's just a parameter and a parameter action to control that highlight color. So Kim's going to throw the link in the chat if you want to recreate something like this back at your organization. So the pro to this is you can see one group very clearly and with all the other lines grayed out, but that's kind of also the con. You can only see one group at a time, right? It's hard to know what these other gray lines are, and it's hard to follow one because they're all the same color. So you kind of lose that whole picture. And I absolutely think there's times and places where you might want to use something like this. But if you want your user to be able to see all the groups at the same time, we have opted to do something like this, which is a trellis chart or a small multiple. And I'll zoom in on this. So here you can see we've got that overall rate again, which is the line. And then the area chart is the overall rate for each ethnic category. And here you get to see every single group broken out over time compared against the overall all at once. And it's very easy to see that we have two groups of students who are not doing as well as our others. And that's our Black students and our Latino students, right? Every single year that we're looking at, they are performing below the overall average. And that's something that's really easy to see in a chart like this. Not so much in a chart like this. That is there, right? You can mine for it, but it's not something your user is going to see really quickly, which is why we've pivoted to show data kind of in this manner. We've also been able to elevate this chart thanks to Kevin Flairlage and a blog post that he put out all about how to make trellis charts zoomable. So like Kim was talking about in the beginning, we tend to keep charts pretty minimalistic when possible. So not putting a ton of data labels on and a lot of extra information so the user can kind of see what's going on. But we know that people want that level of detail as well, and there's times and places for it. So we try to create kind of this like two-tiered multiple level of charts. And so in this case, the user can click on one of these data points and it'll zoom in and give them the extra information they may want. In this case, data labels, right? Showing the overall rate compared to the group that we're looking at. So again, the reason we were able to do this is thanks to the brilliant Kevin Flairlage. And if you want to recreate something like this back at your organization, I have three resources here. The first is a fantastic video by SQL Bell. This is the one that I feel like really helped me understand what was going on under the hood of a trellis chart. It's got all the calculations. She walks through it really well and really slowly so you can understand and get a really good comprehension level of it. Andy Kriebel also has a great video. He just jumps into building the chart a little bit faster. So if you're just ready to go, he's the one you probably want to go with. And then, like I said, Kevin Flairlage has that blog post about how to make the chart zoomable so you can zoom in and out. So showing the disaggregated data is one half, but like I said before, we are always showing disproportionate impact whenever we show success metrics for students. So you can see up here in the top right, there's a button that says show DI. And this is just a button that's attached to a show hide container. So this is going to pop out that chart that Kim was showing you at the beginning, where now we have the actual percentage point gap saying, okay, yeah, we looked at the success rates. It looked like those two groups of students were performing lower. But were they statistically lower? Was it actually meeting disproportionate impact standards? And yeah, it is. You can see that every single year for these student groups, they are underperforming compared to the overall. And this is a problem, right? This is not something we want to see in our data. And this is the type of stuff that we turn over to our student equity department, to our faculty to say, hey, big bells and whistles, this is not okay. This is something we need to work on. We need to work with these groups of students. We need to do professional development for our faculty and our staff around how to start closing these gaps. And that's exactly what Kim's going to talk about, is some of the techniques and things that we do with this data to help our students and stakeholders around campus.
Yes. Up until now, we've kind of talked about the big picture sort of overarching metrics that we look at and follow over the course of an academic year. But really, it starts in the classroom. And the faculty are the linchpin of this entire process. And so making sure that our faculty are data literate, that they understand their data is key to this entire process. So we, using row level security, have built a dashboard that allows them to go in and look at their own metrics compared to the overall departmental or course. We'll talk about courses in a second. But this allows them a space to go in, look at their own outcomes, look at their own equity gaps, and start asking questions without this being something that we publish campus wide. We use row level security so that only the faculty member is able to access this data. We don't show section or grade data in any program to any other faculty member other than the faculty member teaching the course, not their deans, not their department chairs, nobody. So this is really an opportunity for faculty members to go in and look at their own data and start exploring and asking the why questions. We have a number of different institutes that we run both on our campus as well as within our San Diego and Imperial County region, where faculty are paired with a research analyst to do data coaching, to go over their own data, to look at best practices, and to see and identify where their equity gaps may be. This dashboard shows on the bottom the individual faculty member. Since this is real data, we blocked out the faculty member's name, but it gives them the overall success rate and then the individual groups disaggregated by ethnicity. The chart on the top is the overall English department's equity gaps. So it allows a user to go in the privacy of their own homes and start exploring and asking themselves some challenging questions about what may be or not going on within their classes. Over on the left-hand side, we have some filters that allow a user to go in and select either all their classes, or they can select a class or a group of classes to do their comparisons. So we provide the opportunity for faculty to do a lot of exploration on their own, and we make ourselves available at any time to help with the analysis portion, answer questions, and run through what might be occurring within the classroom. If you would like to lock down your data and you have Tableau server, you can implement row level security using this post at tableau.com that will allow you to create dashboards requiring a login and limit the views to only those that have the authority to actually see them or should have the access to see them. The other piece of this puzzle is student services, and these teams are the ones who work directly with the students. Frequently, they are the first people who have any contact with a student on the campus. So providing supports early and as thoroughly as possible is extremely important to us as an institution. And we're going to show you a couple of examples of this. This is our CARE dashboard. CARE is a program that provides wraparound services to our most economically disadvantaged student groups. And right now we have the breakdown done disaggregated by LGBT status. You will notice that we have overrepresentation over on the left-hand side of our LGBTQIA plus students. We have balanced representation for those that do not identify within that community. And for those who have not identified, there is underrepresentation in that particular group. Now, the leadership of our CARE program looks at this and says, okay, this is actually what we want to see. The reason that they want to see overrepresentation in terms of the LGBTQIA population is that within our campus community, that population is more likely to be economically disadvantaged. So if we had balanced representation across all these groups, that would be a sign to the leadership of our program that the students who most need these support services aren't getting them. So that's a cue to them to say, okay, well, if we have balanced representation and we should have overrepresentation, we need to do additional outreach, or we need to figure out why students aren't accessing our services. Is it something that we're doing that is not encouraging students to come to us for assistance? So while we talk about balanced representation across all groups, in a lot of cases for services that don't necessarily serve the entire college population, but serve a group of students that need a specific service, over and under balanced representation may be the goal in those cases. And we're going to show you all of our dashboards have a template format, essentially. We have a series of templates that we use in our office where we keep things in the same place in terms of general functionality, information icons, filter icons. We keep them in the same place so that our users, because we have 5 or 6 different research analysts on our campus, we're all building different Tableau dashboards. We don't want our users to go in and say, okay, well, where are the filters on this dashboard compared to that one? We want to keep everything as consistent as possible. So with our information icons, we use that to provide a lot of additional text, context, remove the need for unnecessary legends, just to try and keep things as simple and clean as possible on the dashboard, but provide that extra support if a user has questions. We want to make these as self-service as possible. So we balance the keeping things as simplistic as possible with providing enough information to understand what's going on. Tooltips are the other way we provide additional context. We never use the out-of-the-box tooltips that come with a different viz that you might build. We always want to use color intentionally, text where it's necessary, and as well as the raw numbers behind the scenes so that users can understand in context what is actually going on. This last dashboard is one we use for our student services programs. Each year, all of our college campuses and programs go through a review process where they look at their success rates, their participation, and make sure that they are doing everything they can to help support the students' educational experiences. On this dashboard, you will see a number of tabs along the top. So we have a number of different categories that each student service can explore in terms of students that utilize their services. On this main page, we default to the age, gender, ethnicity categories, but we have a number of additional tabs, as I said, further on, but we default to these. We show the basic breakdown of the categories of participation within the particular service, as well as the college-wide population. But then if a user clicks the filter icon, again in the upper right-hand corner, we have a breakdown of the proportionality index values for each metric that you will see throughout this workbook. If we can zoom in on the age category, this is another example where balanced representation may or may not be the goal for this. For this particular service, we see a huge overrepresentation of students that are between the ages of 18 to 20. We have significant underrepresentation for those students who are ages 21 to 24, and virtually zero representation for any category beyond that. The head of this program is totally okay with this breakdown. The reason for this is that this is our intercollegiate athletics program. And while it is entirely possible that tomorrow our athletic director will come to us and say, you know, we really want to spend money bringing more senior citizens onto our basketball squads, I don't necessarily think that's going to happen. And we show this extreme example to say, again, that it's not necessarily balance that you're always looking for. This program serves a specific group of students where, in comparison to a program like counseling, where we would want to see representation more along the lines of this. This is what we would expect to see for a service that serves the college-wide community. Still, there may be some underrepresentation in some of our student populations, but that is an opportunity for that particular service to do additional outreach to those specific audiences rather than doing just a blanket announcement campus-wide. So these are the ways that we really start digging in and using disproportionate impact in all of the things that we do. We don't build dashboards without a DI element to it wherever it's possible, and really encouraging people to have those difficult conversations about, okay, well, overall the numbers look good, but look at these populations that may need additional assistance. And so this is a level of inquiry that we historically have not yet had. So this is a really exciting time for our college. And with that, we absolutely want to thank you so much for inviting us to speak today. And we're happy to answer any questions you may have or hand it back over to Lawrence.
Thank you so much. I'm honestly like sitting here, I've got so many ways of like thinking in my work and people analytics at a corporate level, you know, how to like kind of move some of this into, you know, that space and how we see that across the board. I know we do have some questions in the Q&A. But one of my questions has been, so we've seen a lot of this data at one specific identity or demographic. So from that, there, of course, is within communities a lot of even more disproportionate, sociological society reactions to individuals that are multiple groups. A lot of people talk about multidimensionality just on that side of it with multiple identities. And then there's also, intersectionality, which is the multiple oppressed identities, of individuals. How do you take this work at that level, or if you do, and move it into the multiple levels and look at really like what are the demographics that are really being hit, like that have those multiple identities?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's something that we still grapple with. Something that is tough is a lot of the times when we start disaggregating by multiple variables, our samples get so small, right? We have groups of such, 5 students sometimes in some cases, and we just don't have enough information. So when it's possible, we didn't show any examples of this today, but we do put multiple variables in for the user to disaggregate by. But a lot of times we just don't have enough data essentially to disaggregate that. So it's something that's been coming up a lot more in our conversations, especially with our equity department, is how can we start including that? So I feel like we're still kind of on the cusp of how to do that really well. Outside when we have, really large groups of students or a lot of data.
And one of the things that we deal with when this comes up, because it does frequently, particularly when we start looking at the individual faculty or course level, where the max enrollment may be 25 students. And so making sure that you have enough students to really evaluate DI is tricky. In those cases, what we encourage faculty and anybody on campus to do is to look longitudinally at their data. Even if a group is really small, over time, if the success rates are consistently below the group average or those that are not in that particular population, there may be something there still to investigate. So we never say, oh, well, that group's too small, don't bother looking at them. We absolutely want people to continue to investigate. And over time, we should be able to aggregate the data to a point where we have enough to say what's actually going on.
Definitely. And so actually that goes in on another question. Is you talked about, these courses have so few people and things like that. And, when we talk about equity and when we talk about small N numbers, whether it's surveys, whether it's populations, there are possible reactions to that to where you could pinpoint the individual. We look at that from a survey perspective, surveys all the time of like, you have to have a certain N amount and you can't give, because you could identify who mentioned this or was this. How do you fight that with so small N levels at times, especially at a course at time position?
Yeah, we didn't really talk too much about this. I don't know if you want to take this, Kim, but we suppress data. So our obligation absolutely is to keep our student level information and data secure. We don't want to have anyone be able to identify a specific student. So we do suppress small N sizes when something like that is a possibility, right? Because like you said, we would never want our obligations to the student. We don't want to put their data out there for someone to identify them.
Definitely. Awesome. So thank you for those. Those were the two things that topped. And of course, I'm going to be replaying this and going back through it and being like, okay, what can I take? So into the Q&A. So Sarah asks, my work is looking towards revising and improving our public dashboards. Do you have any advice for this process, especially for dashboards for different audiences?
What can you give me more?
So Sarah, if you want to come off mute and give a little bit more there and, and ask your other questions too.
Yeah, I was thinking of the part in the beginning when you went from the gray and red diverging bar charts to the squares. and like how you worked through that process of making improvements, and yeah, any advice for like like looking at your dashboards in a new way. And maybe this goes into the feedback presentation too.
Yeah, so I think, so like Kim said, people just kind of gave us feedback. They were like, yeah, I don't
They're not
understand
shy.
this. No, they're like, we don't understand this. What are all these numbers? What are these lines? And it was very clear to us, like, oh, this is too much for just a casual user of our dashboards. We also, anytime we roll out a dashboard, we always present it to, especially the person or group who's asked for it, to make sure it makes sense to them. And a lot of times they'll give us feedback and say, oh, I don't get this. Or if you can tell, if you're having to explain something to someone a lot, that it's not working. So I would say, yeah, anytime I roll out a new dashboard, talk about it with whatever stakeholder has asked for it. And then, yeah, I feel like people give us a lot of unsolicited feedback. I don't know what if you have anything to add to that, Kim.
Well, I think as much as we like to think that we're perfect when we release a dashboard and we think this is the best dashboard ever, we are brought back to reality very quickly by people who are like, yeah, I don't get this. It's like, but no, it's cool. Really, it's really neat. So they're being flexible is really key to the process, to solicit as much feedback as possible, and to really listen and try and adapt when somebody says to the coolest thing you've ever built, yeah, no, can you just make this a table? That hurts my soul. But at the same time, you really have to go with what's going to work for the user.
And I think too, speaking to different audiences, Sarah, like we said, try to build in different levels where it's maybe a high level and then more detailed information as a user kind of drills into it, depending on what they want. So kind of keeping it broad as possible for, like I said, like a casual user or someone who may have just stumbled across your dashboard, and then make sure those details are there for someone who might need them for their job or their needs.
Got it. Thank you so much. And we can, I had a second question, but we can jump ahead to Emmanuel's question if you want to take that, Lawrence.
Fantastic, sure. So Emmanuel's question, it's about PPG. What other outcomes have been measured using this method besides academic goals and care? So through the use of PPG.
All of our student services have the PPG method. Okay. The PPG is actually an achievement metric. So things like course success, course retention, anything where there is a metric to be achieved, that we want students to a point where we want students to get to, we always want to measure the DI values for those to make sure that there's no group that is significantly impacted compared to the rest of the population. So that just comes as a natural part of our analysis process.
Pretty much anywhere we have any kind of student outcome, there's DI analysis with it.
I can't think of one where there's not. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. I mean, it's even like how many students have matriculated, how many have ed plans. I'm blanking on others. Or unit attainment. How many have achieved 12 units by the end of their first semester? There's so many different variables where we use that pretty much across our college.
Completed ed plans. There's countless.
Transferred, got degrees.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And then the last question here is from Megan. What changes have you made in reporting on gender specifically in recent years, and how has adoption been?
So I feel like this is something that we have, it's tough because we have some things that we have to report, we're mandated to report to the state in their specific categories, but we don't feel like it's very inclusive or representative of our students. So we actually have a survey that we put out. It's called our pre-registration survey. Every single student has to answer that survey in order to enroll in a class. So it's great because we can basically ask follow-up questions or more inclusive questions that we want to ask students to get this information. And we added a gender identity question that our student equity department came up with. So we often will report things out on, the typical gender categories that we're required to report on, but then also include a gender identity disaggregated view as well, so that we are looking at it kind of from multiple ways.
Yes. And this
so
has been in place for about the last 4 years.
Yeah.
And given that, how has you looking at it in the way of gender identity and, with those additional, notations, how has that adoption looking at it from that side and not just the government mandated side been from your faculty and looking at it and at that breakdown?
So I'm sorry, I'm not.
Sorry.
I don't know.
How has been the response of seeing that those additional genders and
like what's the reaction been on campus?
Yes.
I feel like it's always mixed. We have a lot of people who are appreciative and thankful that we're giving them information at this level. Especially, I see that a lot in our student services departments. They want to see this and see it in their data. I don't work as closely as the faculty. So Kim, I don't know if you have a perspective from them. I haven't really worked with them.
I think student equity is still. There are many who have embraced the concepts and adopted them wholeheartedly. But I think for a lot of our faculty who are still focusing on, okay, I need to teach my class, I need to get students this information. All of this information is really nice, but it's not my primary focus. And so we still have a lot of work to do to encourage faculty to look at their data and their students in ways that they historically haven't. Having these additional categories and additional context has really opened the eyes of a lot of our faculty, but we're not 100% there yet.
Definitely makes sense. And yeah, it's always a journey and like switching those focuses and those individuals that have that changing priorities.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Lisa, Kim, for talking about this. Definitely a great discussion. Thank you, Lisa, twinning today. We talked about this a little bit earlier, from that perspective on the shirts. But thank you both. You have been fantastic. Definitely a lot to think on and a lot to go back to. So thank you both.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Of course. So now, super excited to be introducing our next presenter, Nicole Klassen. Nicole is a data developer at ADT Associates. Her background is in psychology, and prior to working in analytics, she worked at a community inpatient children's psychiatric hospital. Her visits tend to focus on mental health, equity, and participating in Viz for social good. She loves rock climbing, spending time with her family, and Doctor Who. And so now I do have to say Nicole is one of my co-leads. She's the one that helped bring me in on even more into the DataFamCon co-lead, and all that. So super excited to have Nicole here, especially when you go to, we'll put the links to her Tableau public page, look at her Doctor Who vizzes. Those I geek out about a lot. So super excited to have you here, Nicole.
Thank you. I need to start asking to go first because that was such an amazing presentation from Lisa and Kimberly, and it's going to be a hard one to follow. But I am here today anyway to talk about giving and receiving feedback. I'm sharing my screen now. It definitely is something that Michelle Freeman and I talk about a lot, and we do a lot of feedback sessions for. So Michelle couldn't be here today, so I'll be presenting for both of us. But giving and receiving feedback is something that I have always found to be really scary, so it's a great topic for today. We're going to go over kind of, giving and receiving it, when to, when not to, and how to make it a very positive experience rather than an anxiety-provoking one. So this is for everybody, whether you are brand new into data viz or you've been doing it for 20 years. Anyone can be the recipient or giver of feedback. You do not have to be an expert. When receiving feedback, it's great to get a lot of various perspectives from both experts and someone who is new to data viz, because that you could be going into something really complicated and technical that your audience won't understand because they may not be experts. So getting that wide variety of perspectives is something that is really important. So don't hesitate on giving feedback if it's asked for, if you don't feel like, oh, I'm not experienced enough to do that. And there's always opportunity for improvement in data viz. So why you should request and provide feedback. From both perspectives, it helps you grow and make new connections. It gives that different perspective. It can prevent you from being stuck. I know with Makeover Monday, they used to, I think they still do, these Viz reviews where Makeover Monday provides a prompt and then everyone kind of goes, they do their own Viz and they can request feedback. And then in a video session, Andy will go through and provide feedback. By watching feedback on other people's Vizes, you can learn a lot as well. So don't feel stuck like you can only, receive feedback on your Viz. You shouldn't go and watch other people's, anything like that. This is an example of feedback on a Viz that my friend Juana and I created. And this is where, kind of getting that feedback even in the very early stages is super helpful. So the top portion was it's a Figma wireframe of the Viz that Juana and I wanted to create. And it wasn't done by any means. We don't have any data. We didn't have a Tableau workbook, but we were like, something about this is just not working and we don't know how to fix it. So we went and requested feedback at a really early stage through the Viz office hours, which Michelle, myself, and Zach Geis co-lead. And what helped was having something very specific in mind to ask about. So what we wanted was a magazine look and feel for our Viz. And so we came in, we showed this, and we're like, look, we really kind of want this like magazine feel, but it's not working right now. And after talking with Michelle and Zach, what the biggest thing that they talked about was making sure that people don't have to scroll in two directions. So right now this Viz would be taller than a normal monitor and wider. So you would need to scroll in both directions. We're like, okay, how can we get this magazine look without going vertical? Because I don't feel like that feels like a magazine, but also being able to scroll in one direction. And that's when we came up with this, let's go wide. And this is what our final Viz looked like. So again, as you're working through your Vizes, coming in at the beginning, a lot of people I've heard are like, I don't have anything to show. I just have an idea. It's like, great, still talk about it, because we needed this layout in order to have everything fall into place on the visualization side. Oh, how to get this to go away. So when and how to provide feedback. When to provide feedback. This is the biggest thing that kind of gets me about feedback. Provide it when it's been requested. So for me personally, I have anxiety, especially social anxiety. And for me, when I post my Vizes on Twitter, I do not say feedback welcome when I post on Twitter. And the reason for that is not because I think my Vizes are perfect. I definitely don't. But it's because if I post it and then people start providing feedback on this public setting, I would become so anxious that I would not post ever again. I would just be like, all right, well, that wasn't a great feeling, and I would not participate in the community anymore. So instead, what I do personally is I request feedback privately before my go live of a Viz. I'll kind of seek out people who I'm really close with, who know the topic, who don't know the topic, to get that perspective, but I do it all privately so that when I'm going public, I don't need to request the feedback so that my anxiety doesn't kick in. And that's something that I've seen a lot. I won't say I see a lot. I've seen it on Twitter. I see it happening a little bit more now, which makes me a little bit sad, is that people will post vizzes and someone will say, oh, this is beautiful. What about this? Even though in the tweet, it didn't say feedback is requested. So that's something to really be conscious of. Everybody has an opinion. And just remember that it's an opinion and you don't need to share it. Some caveats to that is if you see something that is wrong, like a metric is just wrong, or there's something that, maybe it's a really bad practice or something, the insights are bad, something that's very egregious. Even in that state, if feedback hasn't been requested, what you can do is privately reach out to the person and say, are you open to feedback? And if they say no or they don't answer you, just leave it. We're not going to be causing catastrophic world events to occur because a viz might have something that's inaccurate on it, unless it's New York Times or something. So being very careful when you provide feedback is something that will help foster a community and will help everybody kind of grow within that community, because then they'll be more comfortable posting more vizzes, maybe more comfortable asking for feedback publicly, or more comfortable requesting it privately. Either way, it will help everybody grow and create this, sense of community. So that's something that I'm very passionate about. And another way is providing feedback in a positive manner. And so when I first started learning about giving feedback, something I read was, always focusing on positives. And that kind of didn't feel right away, because I was like, why would I focus on the positives? Like if someone's asking for feedback, like shouldn't I be kind of, saying, oh, what is and isn't working? And you can, but the way you do that is in a positive framework. And so the way you can do that is by saying like, this is working for me, or this isn't quite working the way I think you want it to. So like, based on your viz, based on your question, I think you want to highlight this, but what's X, but what's standing out to me is Y. And so it's not saying, hey, your feedback's not saying what you say it's saying. It's like, I think you're trying to say this, but what I'm getting is this. And once they have that perspective on what people are seeing in their viz, that's the feedback they need in order to go and make the changes that they feel appropriate. Because a lot of data viz is very artistic. And so our numbers are numbers. We're data people. We like our numbers. We like all of that stuff. But when it comes to visualizing it, it can be very artistic. That's one of the things I love about Makeover Monday is there's one data set that's vizzed hundreds of different ways, and there isn't a correct way. And so we have to be thinking about that and keeping that perspective in mind when we are providing feedback. So make sure the message matches the moment. Meet people where they are. If they are creating a super small viz that is really, very focused, very, single page, single data point, don't start giving iron viz level feedback to them. Like focus on where the viz is and where they are. And make sure you understand what they are looking for. We'll talk about a little bit when you're asking for feedback, but sometimes people are just like, what are your thoughts? And that's so broad that, you could go really high level, you could go really deep. Make sure if someone's just very vague about it, kind of ask them, what are you looking for? Are you looking for design? Are you looking for best practices? What are you looking for? Because that can help drive the conversation. People like to receive it in different ways. As I said, for me, public feedback is something that I am just very uncomfortable with. So I do everything privately through DMs. Other people really enjoy the interaction and live feedback. And that's where something like the Viz Office Hours can come in, where you hop on a Zoom call with Michelle, Zach, and I, and we talk through it live. A big thing is help them achieve their vision, not yours. As I said, a lot of the data viz can be very artistic. And while there are technical things we have to prescribe to, It's their art. It is the person who is asking for feedback's art. So help them understanding what they're trying to achieve and understanding what their art is trying to achieve, and then help them achieve it. You know, if there's something like colors, like, oh, I would have used this blue instead of that blue. I mean, that's your opinion, but that's not helping them to achieve their vision. They picked that for a reason, most likely. Like, focus instead on the bigger picture. Is there meaning coming through? Is it the best way to visualize the discrepancy they're trying to show or the data that they're trying to show? Help them achieve that rather than what you would do with that data set. And then giving feedback as an opinion. There are going to be some cases where there might be something factually wrong on a dashboard. Like, sorry, you meant 20 and you accidentally typed 2. But in general, especially on the design and the charts used and all of that, it is subjective. So giving your feedback as an opinion, like, I think, maybe try this, will help foster communication, but also can help the person receiving the feedback not feel like they have to implement changes that you recommend, because it can offer that, like, oh, that's their perspective, that's their opinion, but that's great. It's great to know that this point isn't coming through. So maybe I will try this. Or, you know what, that was a great piece of feedback, but it doesn't match my vision, so I'm not going to take it. And by saying your feedback as an opinion, it gives them that ability and that leeway to take and leave what they want, rather than making them feel forced to make changes based on what your recommendations are. When asking for feedback, the biggest thing, ask for it. Like, when you're working on something and you want feedback, ask for it. Not everyone may be open to providing feedback. I am very open. In theory, my DMs on Twitter are open, although with the new X and everything, I've been told some people are having trouble messaging me. But in general, you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn, on Twitter. However, I'm happy to provide feedback. So the biggest thing is just ask. When you are asking, have a specific ask for your feedback. And that can, it can be, this chart isn't working for me, what do you think? Or I have a question on the design, I have a question on the layout. But by having that ask, you're more likely to get what you need, rather than someone kind of spinning their wheels and like, what's you looking for here? Make use of what works for you. So as I said, when you're giving feedback, you should form it as an opinion, but some people won't, and they'll be like, change this. Don't feel like you have to. Make use of what works for you, and make sure you are keeping your vision for your dashboard as you work through the feedback. Communicate back with the person giving feedback. And this is something where, like, if I give someone feedback and they don't implement anything, I'm not saying that I am the best data visitor or I have the best opinions. It is fine if I give my feedback and they're like, hey, that sucked, and I'm not going to do it. But communicate with me, like, hey, that wasn't quite in the way of my vision. I really appreciate your feedback, but I'm not going to, go in that direction. That's fine. But if you kind of ask for feedback and don't implement anything, and you just kind of ghost the person, that is going to set up a bad relationship with the person who gave you feedback, and they may not want to help you in the future with feedback on future visits. So again, just keeping that communication open when you're giving and receiving feedback, because again, you don't have to do anything that the person says, but telling them about it will keep that relationship open, so that in the future you can go back to them and ask for feedback on a different viz, and they'll be willing to, like, absolutely, I would love to keep working with you. Iterate, but keep your older versions. That's something that I'm really bad about, and then it makes me really sad, because I see all of these people talking about, like, this is what it started as and this is what it ended as, and I'm like, oh, I'm really bad at keeping my old versions. So keep iterating, but kind of keep your older ones, because it's a fun journey to see where you started and where you end. And then, this is a quote or a line from Michelle, but she's like, I learn something from every review she attends. This is in regards to Rake over Monday. So even just coming and watching a Makeover Monday Viz review, and even if you didn't participate, can provide feedback in a way that, maybe someone isn't ready to actually receive specific feedback on their Viz. So instead they watch a Viz review, they kind of hear about these best practices, these ideas, and they can just take that knowledge into their Viz. So that's a way to do it as well. As with our Viz office hours, you can always just kind of pop in and look at what other people are Vizzing instead of participating on your own. Happy to do that. So this is my last slide. Where can you get feedback? This is not inclusive, so there are other ways to do it as well. Makeover Monday weekly Viz review. The feedback loop is something that Michelle and I run about twice a year. So we don't have one going now, but we will. And what this is this is a small cohort. We try to keep it to 10 people or less. And we create a Slack channel. And what happens is the 10 people plus Michelle and I'll create a Viz, I'll ask for feedback, and it lets people practice giving feedback, but then also receive 10 different perspectives on a Viz that they're creating on their own. Office hours, they're hosted weekly by Michelle, Zach, and I, Wednesday afternoon Eastern time and Friday morning Eastern time. Just a Zoom call, hop on. Back to Viz Basics Twitter. So this one is one where if you say feedback requested on a Back to Viz Basics Viz, then they will post feedback publicly for you. General feedback requests, just throw it out there on LinkedIn or Twitter, which is X, I realize, but that you're looking for feedback, and you can add, see if anyone is willing to pop in. And that's a little bit more broad, hit or miss. Direct messages, community project roundups, and one that's not on here because this is slightly older, but since it is Iron Viz season, Sarah Bartlett is running feedback sessions for Iron Viz specifically. They start next week. There's a great group of community members providing feedback on Iron Viz topics as well, so you can always hop in and do Iron Viz specific feedback there too. And that is what I have.
So talking about feedback in here, Nicole, just everything that you've been talking about, one of the things that I think you brought up was about, sending feedback in private DM, looking at those type of things. I think it was that, like, I was thinking there was a big Viz at one point that was going out, and a lot of people, and the creators requested feedback, and it was all just like a jumble and getting lost. But it's like there was feedback, like having gone through, I wanted to provide some of the feedback, but didn't want to get it all missed in like a big group text or anything like that. So message them on the side. And it was also be like, hey, just a small thing. It's not one of those things where, you see that and then people would think, oh, that's something that people would think is simple and all that.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's still something, and it's still feedback, depending, especially if you put your heart and soul into a Viz or anything like that. So, the different avenues and like thinking about that is huge, I think. And I know I've done Viz office hours before with you and Michelle, just to put out an idea. It's never become anything because I have like 20 million half finished Vizes myself. But, it's one of those things. It was great just to talk it out. I think that's, asking for Viz, feedback through Viz office hours or other areas, just to talk about your Viz and get that idea too for feedback helps, refine it, or, just put it out there. Because sometimes we can typing something or thinking about it in our heads, we get one specific way, but when we put things to words and talk to someone about it, things can change and you see it in a new perspective. And, I think those are all huge.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's what I love about the community, is that everyone is so willing to help with feedback and meet people where they're at. And that helps everybody grow and create a community.
Yes. And I think also, if you ask for feedback and work with people on feedback, even if you don't know them well, that also fosters even more community. And I think and you end up talking and getting to know a person, and you have more, connections even in that way. But you did talk about the Iron Viz feedback sessions, which Sarah has posted in the chat as well. And Viz office hours, we actually do have a question of how does kind of Viz office hours go? I posted the link to your blog in the chat, and that has that link to Viz office hours, but kind of what is the setting for Viz office hours? How does that kind of go?
Yes, so it's really informal. It's just a Zoom hour. When you go to the blog, there's a sign up, there's a, some dashboard with information and a sign up link, and then also the Zoom link. So we open it up, or it is just open. We do encourage people to sign up for the office hours, because if we do hop on and no one signed up and no one shows up for like 10 minutes, we will sign off. So we don't necessarily just sit there for the full hour. But we do always open it every week. We'll hop onto the Zoom call. You can register, in which case we'll get a link to your Viz beforehand and we can take a look beforehand. If not, just show up. And what happens is we just, we get a few people there. So we just start with, say, Lawrence, and we'll say, hey, just share your Viz. We give you power to screen share. You walk through it, say, this is my big concept. This is where I'm kind of looking for feedback. And the three of us just have a conversation with you to go over it. And if there are more people, then, we open the floor up if other people want to provide feedback as well, or if people just want to listen. We typically do focus on Vizes, so we'll focus on those first, but we've had people come in who just want to chat about something data viz related in general, like, hey, I'm trying to get a CUE going, what are your thoughts? Or, hey, I'm trying to implement templates at work, what are your thoughts? And we usually, I don't think we've ever run out of time, so we can just chat about that as well, but it's just a way to get a hold of the three of us for an hour.
Fantastic. Yes, I have to say the one Viz office hours I've gone to so far was great, and just working with you. And then, of course, I talk to you all the time, so there is that. You and Michelle. And so there was a question: is there a cost for Viz office hours?
Nope.
Nope. I think that's one of the things is that we see in the data fam is a lot of people put their personal time and their personal soul into the data fam to help give feedback, to support, and so it's absolutely fantastic.
I mean, so many of us, I know myself, like I wouldn't be where I am without the community support, so we're just happy to give it back as much as we can.
Yes. Well, thank you, Nicole, so much for talking about feedback. Feedback is definitely a scary thing, asking for it, giving it because you don't know. And everything that you've noted helps relieve that tension in giving and receiving feedback. So thank you so much, and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Fantastic. So real quick, before we close out, just to wrap up, we will have a survey going out here shortly about today's event. It'll be automated through the system. We will be putting the recording on our YouTube channel at DataPride Tug, and we will be sending out an email with the links from today. We've been gathering them in a notepad for those that we didn't already have. So many great links, and even we'll add some more from parts of what Nicole just said, all the different feedback initiatives and areas to go. And with that as well, we don't have it up on the system yet, but stay tuned. We will be next month having our last actual event of the year to close out. It's going to be November 9th. Save the date. Thank you, Sarah. She just posted that in the chat. But if you go to this QR code, you can join if you haven't already, joined the DataPride LGBTQ plus user group event page to get our emails and see our events as they come up. But we will be doing one more event this year before closing out for the year end and holidays and everything else. but we definitely won't be quiet during that time either. So super excited for that. And so thank you everyone for being here today. Thank you, Lisa, Kim, Nicole, for your fantastic presentations on things that are scary and new and different. So many different things to think about across the board, whether it's on the equity data or it is on feedback and what we do for our visits. Thank you for everyone for participating in the chat and just being here today. So we hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Happy National Coming Out Day, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you all.